Roland Beat Drums 5 Series. Flagship sound engine. Precision you can feel. Expand your drum kit. Endless new sounds. Seamlessly connect and create. Creativity unleashed. For more info, visit roland.com.
Hello, everyone. Before we dive into today's episode, I wanted to remind you that my book, Drummers on Drumming, is available now on Amazon as both a paperback and an ebook. Based on the Big Fat 5 segment of this podcast, where I sit down with my favorite drummers to discuss the 5 records and stories that shaped their approach to the instrument, this book is packed with insights from the drummers who redefined how we think about the modern drum set. You can grab your copy now by checking the link in this episode's show notes or simply searching Drummers on Drumming on Amazon. So thank you for all the support, and now let's get into the show. What is up? Welcome back to Drummers on Drumming, a podcast powered by Big Fat Snare Drum. So it's December, and I thought I would do the rest of the year as kind of best of episodes. I'm not going to say there's a rhyme to my reason, because that would mean I have any sort of organization. But I did just choose a few clips that I thought stood out to me, and they were fun. So first up, we have the drum panel, and it was titled, "You're Totally Not a Mound of Dirt," from July 23rd. And this involved Mark Stepbro and Eric Urea. All right, what's the best compliment you can get as a drummer? Not even what you have gotten, but what do you think is the best compliment you could get?
This is a tough one because I've sort of been reevaluating what it means to be a good drummer. Really, at the end of the day, if I walk off stage and everyone's like, "I had fun today," that's it. If my drumming gives everyone on stage the freedom to do their thing, sort of uninhibited, and then therefore the audience in turn has a great time, I think that's generally like you're doing the best job as a drummer that you can possibly be doing. And then if someone acknowledges that that's what's going on, like, "Hey, that was fun." It's sort of a cop-out non-answer, but it's not quite.
I don't think
I
it
really
is.
liked your left-hand diddles. It was really
I've
good.
been working on that all week.
Yeah.
I might be able to come up with a slightly more specific version of your answer, Eric, which is that a great compliment is when the other guys in the band say, "I didn't even really think I knew that tune that well, but when you played it with us, my hands went to all the right places at all the right times." Because the drums, it's really interesting. This is some minutia, but I guess this is a nerdy drum podcast. So if this isn't the place to talk about it, where is?
Yeah.
It's like, so drummers aren't responsible in pop music for harmonic or melodic contributions the way that you would be in like a bebop setting or something like that. You're not really contributing that kind of information. You're not on the hook for that kind of a thing. So what can you do to like hold up your end of the bargain? And the answer to that, I think, one answer is you need to be more aware of the form of the song than everybody else. For example, you're setting up the chorus a bar and a half before the actual chorus, whether that's loosening up on the hi-hat or whatever. You're sort of signaling, oh, a new section is about to happen. And you're doing that ahead of the guys. You're like laying down this track, and then they're just kind of cruising along the track, almost unaware that the track even exists, if that makes any sense. You're setting this groundwork that everybody else just kind of cruises along. And it's a very nice compliment when somebody can say, "Yeah, I just played right through that tune and didn't even think, I didn't have to worry about like, wait, what's coming up next?" Because you were sort of cueing what was coming up next in a way that I didn't have to sweat it. Bass players are responsible for this too, because I was actually doing a gig a while ago with a bass player who's a perfectly nice kid, not like a super pro guy. So these guys that I play with, Why Not, Jansfeld and Daniel Ryan and all these guys are like murdering sick bass players. So I was doing a local gig with a kid who was good, finger quotes, meaning that he played the right note under the chord at the right time. You couldn't accuse him of messing up, right? He was just playing a G when the guitar player was playing a G, and then he was playing an A when the guitar player was playing an A. But there was no like connective tissue filling into different sections, and it was messing me up. And I was like, wait, why do I not know this song? Why can't I cannot remember, these sections keep changing and it keeps feeling like they're just coming out of left field. And it's like, oh, right, because I don't have that they're not guiding me in any way. You know what I mean? So then I had to do all the guiding, and it was hard. So I think that's a very important thing to skill for, like, I guess let's just say a rhythm section in general to have.
I remember someone saying a quote. I hope it wasn't someone on this podcast. I apologize if I'm stealing.
It was like something Mark said 2 minutes ago.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But someone described drumming as guiding people through a cave, and you're the only one with the flashlight. And I thought that was
great.
That was such a good analogy. You know,
Yeah.
if at the end of the day you're there to make sure that nobody trips and falls and stumbles or slips down into a bottomless pit.
What questions do you wish musicians asked themselves more often?
So I was thinking about how there are two questions that you can ask depending on where somebody is in their career. And when you're young, I was thinking that the question that you should be asking yourself is there any reason for me to not go do this thing? Okay, why should I not do this? You get called, you're 22 years old, you move to a new town, you get called to do a gig, and you need the question that you need to be asking yourself is like, is there any possible reason that I should not do this gig? And basically my point is, barring it being a fully abusive, miserable situation where the singer is a serial killer, you should probably just go do it. And what I was thinking is, what's interesting, once you get to my age, I'm 43, when I get asked to do a gig now, the question kind of inverts, and it becomes, if it's like sort of a local gig in town, it sort of becomes like, why should I go do this gig? Like, is there, it's like what economists would refer to as opportunity cost. It's just as you get older, your time becomes more valuable. And my wife has a career and I have a son, and I sort of have to ask myself, and I'm very busy with the wallflowers, and then I come home, and I'm getting kind of tangential here, but our kind of agreement is that I'm not immediately trying to hop back out on the road once I come home. So when something comes in at my age now, I'm asking myself like, is there, why should I do this? But when you're younger, the question should be phrased in reverse, which is like, is there any reason that you shouldn't do this? And if not, you should just go do it. As you get older, you learn, as Why Not would say, whether or not something moves the needle. Is somebody asking you to do a 3-hour cover band set at a Shooter McCanahan's with a Z on the end by the airport that starts at 11 p.m.
Yeah.
for nobody? And you know, you get old enough where you start to notice these like red flags where you're like, okay, I don't think that's going to help me. I don't think that's going to help me. I don't think that's going to help me. But if it's like, there's this woman named Michelle Aquilado that puts on a tribute to Americana artists at the Troubadour every year, and it's well paid, it's at the Troubadour, it's sold out before you even walk in the door, and you're literally backing up John Prine and Lyle Lovett and Dwight Yoakam and stuff like that. And I'm just like, well, I have to do this. Like, I would be insane to not do this, because here's 10 ways that this is going to sort of, again, move the needle and like be a good use of my time.
All right, next up, we have another drum panel episode called Your Electrician is My Favorite Drummer from August 13th. And that involved Brendan Buckley and Gunnar Olsen. If someone called you and said, you have to learn a 30-song set in, let's say 2 days, let's up the stakes, would you guys say yes immediately and then figure it out? Or are you at the point where you're like, that's just not worth, I just don't, the stress isn't there, why do that?
Oh, well, for me, I don't know about Gunnar, but for me, I love that. I love that challenge. That's right in my wheelhouse. I love when a producer or musical director or even a drummer says, dude, can you cover for me on Friday? I'm like, okay, what does it entail? And they tell me, I'm like, yep, I'll do it. And then it's like charting it out on the airplane on the way to the dress rehearsal. I kind of love that. It's really exciting for me and challenging. I wish I did that even more. I enjoy that experience.
How would you actually execute that?
I think it would depend on the gig and depend on the complexity of the songs, you know, what language the songs are in. Everything would come into factors, right? And I think in the end, they're in trouble. The tour's in trouble. They need a drummer, and they need a show to happen on a certain day. So whatever it takes to make that show happen. If it means that I have to have a music stand on stage and play like I'm reading in a high school big band, so be it. But I would not like to do that if I didn't have to. I would love to have everything memorized. So I have different levels of memorization. So there would be like, maybe I memorized the entire set front to back. I got it. That's the goal.
Sure.
Maybe that's not possible. So the second thing you can do is have a set list, and next to every song you have like the cliff notes of every song. Like, this is the one, that does this. This is the one that has a double time section. This is the one that has a 2/4 bar. So you just know, like, I know how this song goes, but there's one thing that you might mess up. So I write it next to the song.
Little anchors. Yeah.
Little anchors. Yeah. That's the next thing. And the third thing is if the songs are just, they all sound the same. There's like 16 power ballads that are all slightly different. You're like, okay, I can't keep track of this in 24 hours notice. So I'm going to put little charts, like you said, either on the floor or not too visible, but somewhere so I can kind of reference it from time to time and get through the songs. I don't think anyone's going to judge you because you had to read your way through a set that you'd never rehearsed before. I think it's okay. Yeah.
What about you, Gunnar? I mean, I'm assuming we're all professionals. We would say yes and figure it out. But I mean, what's your mindset with that?
It would definitely, I've definitely done it. I've gotten a call like, hey, our drummer's flight is supposed to like land in an hour, but he still hasn't taken off. We're playing Summer Stage tonight. Can you learn 8 songs just in case? And then like, getting the text like 2 hours later, okay, he's fine. Like he made it, but like,
wow,
it was kind of like, okay, I'm going to start listening to stuff, but like, give me like, let me know when I really need to like know it by. Cause I had like, it was like 8 hours away. And then, I've had a few like just small gigs that I've done last minute, and I never make charts, but for those I made little, just like Brendan said, like maybe draw out the pattern of the beat. A thing I do if it's a gig where it's songs I don't know really well, I will give myself references to what the beat sounds like. So like if I know I'm starting the song and it's like a beat like Running Down a Dream by Tom Petty, it's maybe sometimes I'll write that in parentheses. So at least like if I count off the song, I at least have an idea like what's the vibe, because I more likely know that song off the top of my head than you're probably counting in a song that you're kind of like, how does this go? And then like, oh yeah, I kind of remember this. I find for gigs like that too, I'm like, find the bass player, find a guitarist, be like, hey man, can you maybe count this off for me? Or like, that's when you're really utilizing your ears, your brain. It's going to be a really singular experience for everyone there because they know you're doing your best. So everyone, like you said, like if you maybe showed up to a gig knowing the song's cold, like you might make eye contact with like the bass player twice because maybe you guys just don't know each other and just, you're feeling it. But I feel like in those situations, everyone's really like, yeah, we got this. Like you go, and it ends up being a really cool experience.
That's when you make friends for life right there. Cause you go to battle together basically.
Have we talked about my Alan Myers story?
No, please tell me.
Okay, so when I first moved to LA, I bought a house in Silver Lake, and this is an old house from like 1921, and there's no outlets or electrical lights anywhere. You go into the backyard, it's pitch black, like you're about to be mugged.
I'm very curious where this is going.
So I asked a friend of mine, this musician I know who is also a contractor, I said, hey man, I need to get some electrical work done to this house. I mean, we need some outlets. There's no place to plug anything in, and there's no lights outside. He's like, yeah, I'll send over my friend. And then I went on the road. So I told my wife, this guy's coming over named Alan, and he's going to look at the house.
Jesus.
So this guy comes over, he's looking around, and he's like, okay, well, we can add a fixture right here. We can do this, we can do that. And she's like, there's also, we need a light in the basement. The basement's also dark. He goes down there. He sees my 68 red Sparkle Ludwig kit just sitting there. And he goes, oh, Ludwig, I used to have one of those. And she's like, oh, you play drums? He goes, yeah, I used to be in a band called DeVoe. And she's like, oh, okay. He doesn't estimate. He's like, I'll be back on Tuesday to do all the work. Cool. He leaves. And I said, how did it go with that electrician? She goes, great. He was a drummer too. I'm like, oh, really? It's like, did he say who he played with? He goes, he said he played with a band called DeVoe. I'm like, you mean Devo? I'm like, do you mean Alan Myers is our electrician? I go, hold on a second. So then I came home from the road and I made sure I was there for when he came back. So he came back and I'm like, hi, nice to meet you. Alan. Yeah, he's like, yeah. So then, and he was the nicest. He was an electrician on the side. And he was the nicest guy. And I, of course, I took a little while before I bombarded him with all these Devo questions.
So we'll finish the outlet, then we'll talk.
Yeah, and he was so nice, and oh my God, and he became a really good friend until he passed away from brain cancer. But he was an awesome human being, and I was so lucky to get to know him for a couple years, and a fantastic electrician.
That's amazing.
Roland V Drums 3 Series. Flagship sound engine. Fits your space. Practice made easy. Expand your sound and setup. Seamlessly connect and create. Next level drumming starts here. For more info, visit Roland.com.
Tito's Handmade Vodka is America's favorite vodka for a reason. From the first legal distillery in Texas, Tito's is 6 times distilled till it's just right. And naturally gluten-free, making it a high-quality spirit that mixes with just about anything. From the smoothest martinis to the best Bloody Marys. Tito's is known for giving back, teaming up with nonprofits to serve its communities and do good for dogs. Make your next cocktail with Tito's. Distilled and bottled by 5th Generation Inc., Austin, Texas. 40% alcohol by volume. Savor responsibly.
All right, next up we have another drum panel episode called Your Mind's Ear, and it was from September 10th, and that one involves Dave Elich and Sarb Singh.
I'll keep this short, but one of the things I talk about with people every day is the fact that all of our friends, all of the greatest drummers of all time, many of them bury the beater. But the thing is no one knows why they're doing it. They just do it. And many people convince themselves that they think, oh, I like the muted sound, or I like the shorter sound for this kind of music, but whatever. No. The reason why people bury the beater is to hold their bodies up in space. Because sitting down and picking your legs up in the air is one of the weirdest things you could do with the human body. You only do it when you're playing drums and church organ. I'm not aware of any other scenario in the world where you sit down and pick your feet up in the air. It's a very strange thing to do. And because of technology, we don't know how to organize ourselves expansively anymore. We're collapsed into ourselves. So you pick your leg up and you go, oh, and you're going to face plant into the rack tom. So what do? Bury your leg into the bass drum. That's why people do it. But people don't know that, right? Or the hi-hat if you're not burying it in the bass drum. So you're doing it not to fall over. It's not a sonic decision most of the time. It's an unconscious, like, survival mechanism, really. And then the very common thing on top of that people do is they not only bury it, but then they hold the beater against the head in between the notes when you're not even playing. If you're not even playing, if you're going, and you're going, like, that's going to make your pocket stiff. Are there people who do that who sound amazing? Tons. Tons. Is that wrong? No. Could they sound better if they stopped doing it? Yeah.
All right, next up, we have a Big Fat 5 episode featuring Ian Matthews of the band Kasabian, and that's from February 5th.
When I was about 21-ish, because I've always played live to musicians, and I did a lot of jazz, big band. I actually did a lot of big band stuff when I was a teenager around the Bristol area, and theatre stuff, all sorts of different styles, but never done a click track. And I actually got a recording session that I went all the way to Paris to do, and it was a click gig. And I was always, in the past, nervous enough of recording studios. I always had red light fever anyway.
Ditto.
Let alone with a click track. It was an absolute disgrace. It was awful.
I'm sure it wasn't as bad as you remember, but I know what you mean.
I never saw them again.
Okay, maybe it was as bad as you remember.
It was disgraceful. It was awful. And the guy was really nice to me, and he was like, I know you play so well live, but you need to nail this for studio work in your future. Mm-hmm. You know, we've tried, it wasn't successful, but you need to really work on this, and you know, because you are a great drummer. So I wedded myself to the click, and I've spent quite a long time of my life on a practice kit just playing grooves to a metronome and snare etudes and stuff, and my rudiments to a metronome, and it's really paid off. And trying to relax into the metronome and try to make it part of you, and sort of like try and play behind it, on top of it, ahead of it, you know, and try and adjust your feel, is probably a part of what you've just said to me. And I think that might have worked, but it just took a lot of time. I know it's not some people's cup of tea, you know, but it's worked for me.
All right, another Big Fat 5 episode featuring Marcus Finney, and this is from July 16th. How do you maintain your voice on the instrument while really invoking the art of listening at the same time and adjusting? How do you balance that? Or is that a Is that a limiting mindset, or what's your response to that?
I think once you are content with who you are, then you just play, because otherwise you're reenacting somebody else. And as I tell students, like, if you want to reenact, you should be an actor, because at least they get paid a lot more than being a junior varsity musician of your hero. Being yourself is the ultimate goal, because you don't have a ceiling when you're yourself. You definitely have a ceiling when you're imitating somebody else, because you're just a cover of them. You know, maybe you'll get a big gig in Vegas, or, you know, something like that, top 40, you know, but, and again, nothing wrong with that. You just have to be okay and not get mad when you hear somebody say otherwise. You got to be like, yeah, well, man, I love doing that. But when you are yourself, man, you can do so much more, and you don't feel like you got to live up to another expectation. And there's a lot of comfort in it. There's a lot of honesty in that. And that's kind of, so I find myself more in that lane now than I have been. You know, it's still like some stuff you're trying to shake off, some certain isms, but at the same time, it's like I shouldn't try to shake anything per se, because it is a part, it's like learning vocabulary words. It's a part of your vocabulary now. So when you say it, it still sounds like your voice. When you talk, you just learned this new word, it still sounds like you said it, even though you learned it from Sean Connery or whatever type of accent, you know, you learned it from somebody else. And when you're learning paradiddles on a kit, it sounds like you. It's a paradiddle. And Wecco played it this way, Gad played it this way, Dennis, whoever, they played it a particular way on around the kit, Max Roach, all the such. When you play it on your kit, it's going to sound like you. And that's a good thing. Transcribing is just to learn more vocabulary words. You don't want to find yourself transcribing, mirroring someone, in my opinion. You don't want to mirror someone so much to the point where your identity gets lost. That's, to me, is kind of why it's important to diversify your influence a little more, because that keeps you from, you know, showing up to a gig even dressing like your hero. I've seen it, man. I've seen it. I'm not calling any names, but I've seen it, and I'm like, wow, you even bought the same shirt that he wears, and
wow,
position your drums the same way in the same swagger. Like, so, I mean, but at the same time, sometimes that's, and it's not a knock, it's more so like identifying someone's process and how they find their sound. And that's okay. But again, if you take anything from what I'm saying, keep in your back pocket that your identity is what you are going for, and be okay with your voice at the end of the day.
All right, next up we have another drum panel, and that one was called Taste is Fake, But My Feelings Are Real. And this was a full house. We had Eric Urea, Dean Sinclair, and Max Flanders, and that was from June 18th. I was listening to a song on the way to actually meet up with Max earlier this week, and I sent it to this group of drummer friends we have, and I was like, man, this snare is really interesting. It's really cool. And then one of our friends got back and he's like, is that interesting? It sounds like every snare in 2025. And in the moment, I got so like defensive. I love this guy. He's one of my closest friends, but he's kind of a curmudgeon sometimes. And he made me feel so like angry in the moment that I was like, yeah, dude, I thought it was interesting. So screw you, you know? And I was aware of how visceral my response was. And the funny thing is, that album I sent him was recorded in 2014. So it was actually 11 years ahead of its time. So I didn't say that, but how do you guys deal with it when someone questions your taste, whether it's about a sound, a groove, or a take or whatever? Do you get defensive, and have you guys made peace with just being like, I don't care about people making fun of my taste? Because I'm obviously still very insecure and small man syndrome about it.
Excuse my French, but everyone's got an asshole, you know?
Yeah.
As I say, it's like, at the end of the day, this is art. You know, that's kind of what makes this thing cool, is everyone... I don't think that there's any absolutes at all in music. Like, this is absolutely the right way. This is absolutely the wrong way. It's just like, It's cool that people have different tastes.
I think to me, the reason why I get so defensive about it is because then it makes me want to over-explain why I think it's cool. And then it makes me question if there's ever, a sound that I'm like, okay, this sounds cool enough to record the take and send it to the engineer, or, the way you tune a snare live and you're like, I think this sounds good in this room. Whenever someone questions my taste in music, it makes me have less confidence in like everything I'm doing that I think sounds cool in the context of like Max at the show you saw me at the other night. You commented on how you liked how the bass drum sounded, and I was super self-conscious about like trying to get that in that context of this like backyard patio thing. So when someone says that, not to repeat myself a third time, but that's where my head goes. I just go like, oh fuck, maybe I don't have any taste in anything.
I would say, just on a general thing, I would say that nothing is for everybody. If someone says like, hey man, I don't really like your band, like that kind of thing doesn't really affect me that much, because I'm just like, that's fine. That's not for you. It's for somebody else.
What if they say something specific about something that you're insecure about?
But yeah, I mean, to your point though, I try to parse it out based on where it's coming from. If it was my bandmates being like, hey, your snare drum sounds like crap, which would maybe be something I'm self-conscious about, then I would for sure take that more to heart. And honestly, I probably would. I wouldn't fight back as much as I would just change it. I'd be like, oh, okay, let me tune it up real quick.
All right, so what I'm gathering so far is that you guys have a strong sense of self, and that you don't tie up everything that negative someone says about you and spiral. Great, awesome.
AI can play your drum parts more perfectly and precise than you ever could as a human being. So you can't compete with that. You can't make the goal placing the bass drum perfectly on the grid or this and that and the other. You have to really figure out your own feel and textures and things for a song, because I feel like if you're the guy who is like, I can do anything, I can do like that's like the old music school sense of like teaching is you need to be able to do this, that, and the other. You need to be able to play jazz, you need to be able to play top 40, blah, 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 like everything. And what really, we're so oversaturated with drummers that can do that there's a lot of incredible drummers that are not working right now, that are not touring, that are not doing things. And I don't know if that has to do with what, but I think having your own voice is way more important and should be the goal of way more drummers, just because... And a lot of people probably disagree with me, but because this AI stuff is coming, I think it's going to make live music more valuable. I think it's going to make recorded music way less valuable, and it already kind of has. And it's also going to push the limits of what music is and art and all of this, because it's like, if a bunch of people have their own voice, it's just going to make a bunch of different types of gumbo.
All right, next up, we have a Big Fat 5 featuring Xavier Ware. And this one was from September 3rd.
Elvin, man, what can I say? So what I can say before I start posing, because anyone that says Elvin, what can I say, has known about him their whole entire life.
Yeah.
I first saw his name, but didn't research, didn't check anything out. virtualdrumming.com, if you've heard of that. You can play drums on your computer keyboard. There's a whole bunch of kits. They've got it now where you can even make custom ones. It's pretty cool.
Virtualdrumming.com.
I still dabble from time to time. It's a good little practice thing too, if you like need some live drums right then to hear and just tap out. Anywho, I saw his name on that. Elvin Jones was one of the jazz drummers listed at that time period, way back when, in middle school maybe. So I would play on his set when I wanted to do jazz stuff, because his tones for the toms they had in the MIDI files back then, they suited what I was doing the best. And still didn't research him. I just knew I loved his drums and those tones they chose for him. College was when I learned about Elvin Jones, and his play style just, you couldn't have convinced me until like I heard it on record that was allowed. And my high school teacher, I'm gonna rat him out a little, Mr. Wright, he knew I came from a church background. So to get me playing jazz so that it wouldn't be churchy jazz, I completely respect it, because jazz is really hard to actually get. Anyone can play a swing pattern. but not everyone can play the language that is.
Sure.
It takes time to get. And you couldn't have told me that the way Elvin played was what the language was when I was in high school, because a fond memory of mine is we were playing some sort of tune and I did a double kick single, but just like ding, 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 got something fast. It was probably a little too fast. Mr. Wright cut the band and was like, there is no double bass in jazz drumming. And I know what he meant. I know what he means now. But back then, I took that to heart. So you best believe unless we were playing a funk song or something, you weren't getting much of any double bass at all from me playing swing. I mean, Elvin aside for a bit, there's this guy named Kobe Watkins, who's also a really good drummer. He's the first guy I saw actually dig in. And from there, when I listened to Elvin, I was like, oh, he's playing that Kobe stuff, but vice versa. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But Mr. Wright had told me no on double bass jazz drumming, essentially. And I took that to heart. And Elvin opened me up to the world of that is allowed. There's like no wrong answers, essentially. If you're following the music and that's what your guiding path is, as long as you're listening, there are no wrong answers. The moment you stop listening and start playing drums, you're liable to be wrong. You can be good enough to make it right while being shut off from the rest of the world. I mean, we've all been there. We've all been tired or not wanting to be somewhere at a certain time and just got to play through it. It's okay to be human, but it's also better to just try and listen through those opportunities as well. So if your ears are open, you really can't make mistakes outside of dropping beats in anything you're playing. There are no wrong answers, and that's something Elvin specifically, along with like Tony and the rest, Max Roach, the GOATs, but his style was the most wide open. Even Tony is still not boxed in, because that's nowhere near the right phrase, but even Tony his swing is straighter, like it's the Tony Williams thing, whereas Elvin, it almost seemed like you didn't know what you were getting. You could get a big bash here, then swing into a wow. With Tony, it was like ticka-ding, 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 ticka-ding. When I was listening to Tony in college, it showed me that you could be wild, but it didn't show me how free you could be necessarily. And he was free as a bird. I understand that now. But Elvin, listening to him, was like, oh, you can like bash a cymbal on beat 3 while a soloist is playing, and it's musical. Let's experiment with that. And then I got told I was too loud a lot in school, so I had to dial that down in college. All the upperclassmen would kick my butt.
All right, lastly, we have another Big Fat 5 episode. Got to end with the best, Zach Danziger, and this is from September 17th. Speaking of trying different things and having a different headspace, it almost seems like you're fearless with what you put out. Are you fearless?
I mean, I really try my best to, within the haphazard nature of what some of the stuff might come off as, I try to be very mindful and very, at least try to be meaningful with its irreverence, meaningful with its decision making. So, like, for example, and maybe it's fearless because I've always said this, even before I did the more wacky projects that I do, I've always felt, back when it wasn't a wacky project, I would always feel that if I left the stage feeling like I played well, musically and did my job well and I was happy with it, I don't care if anybody in the audience comes up to me and says anything. I've played where I thought I didn't serve the music, or the music wasn't very good, or I just didn't play well, or the room was bad, or the sound was bad, and people would come up to me and go, oh my God, you were incredible. That is empty to me. Now, I appreciate the compliment. I appreciate anyone who's going to like what I'm not trying to tell you it wasn't good, but I don't do it to be told it was good. I do it for me to think it's good. And I have to believe in this world, if you think it's good, that you're going to attract the people who also think it's good. You may not hit with everybody. And if that's the case, then that's all right. Those aren't the people that are meant for you. I'm not going to. You want to appeal to as much as possible just because why not? That's a great thing if you could. And you can say, well, in this wacky project, if I'm mindful that adding a little bit more of an understandable thing to some of the tunes, like maybe make the tunes like popish funk tunes, but do outlandish things over it, that might be better than making the tune over something John Cage would have written. Mm-hmm. I've said this to people recently. I may go on a soapbox here. A lot of what it's harsh to say what's wrong with jazz or the problem. Hey, there's no problem if you like what you're doing. That's fine. What I think isn't resonating with, how about that, with certain people with jazz? To me, it's very obvious. And maybe to those artists doing it, it's not quite as obvious. And what I mean by that is, I've always thought, and that's why a lot of the projects I do have, for lack of a better word, a show or an entertainment element to it. Whether it's like we're dressing up and we're doing comedy bits, or we're selling merchandise that goes with the music, or we're doing stuff with video triggering that's in line with the montage of something that's like very nostalgic that people could go, I remember the 80s, I remember that. And a lot of the tunes, like I have a project, Basic Cables, the iteration with a guy named Jeff Babko, and we take like 80s type nostalgia footage. And I say to myself, if you put a vocalist over it, like somebody, we're doing something in a couple of weeks, this will have aired by then, but we're doing something where we honor some of the Jerry Lewis Labor Day Telethon, which had a lot of crazy performances over the years by, you name it, they were on there. And we'll take stuff, but we'll make the musical underbed, we'll remove the original music, and we'll make this music like, let's just say, a Chick Corea tune. Now, to the average layperson, if you just played that Chick Corea tune part of it, it may not resonate. But the fact that in this particular instance, somebody's singing an 80s classic Engelbert Humperdinck tune called After the Lovin', they may latch on to the funniness of that person singing the tune and may not even be misunderstanding the music. They're just zeroing in on the thing that they can understand. And so what you've done is you've given somebody the medicine, but you put the pill in the applesauce and fed it to them like, oh, I'm having applesauce. I'm not just, here's the pill and swallow the pill. I always try to think about that when I do anything, if I can. And I think why certain avant stuff doesn't resonate is because a lot of times it might require, not always, but it might require some sort of cerebral understanding of the genre to an extent that a lot of lay people don't have. Now, you can get someone who doesn't know anything about jazz and hears the most avant stuff and loves it. And I'm sure there's a lot of times that happens. But if you're going to give, to me, those people a truth serum, they're going to leave telling me they were bored out of their guts, out of their mind. And I know that's true because they've told me that. I've gone to gigs and I can see the audience. Not my own gigs, hopefully, although you'll see that in my gigs too. But I'll be like, I know this isn't resonating with 80%. I know it before I even see that they're bored. And I'm watching and they're just like this and they're like, I know it. And I'm sure they can't wait till the set's over and they want to get out of the club. You can probably alter that perception with a couple of minor things to me and maintain your musical integrity, if that makes sense. And I try to do that if I can. Now, if I still can't, then at least I tried and I was mindful that I think it needs something to engage more people for a longer amount of time. I think being aware that maybe you can think of things to do might be the first step, instead of just being like, well, if they don't like my music, they can go else. Well, maybe something can be done on your end. And I always think about that with stuff I do. How could this get my rocks off in that very convoluted way I want it to, but also appeal if possible? And I say that doing the most weird stuff, but so maybe it's already weird, but I'm getting 20% more people than I would have because I've thought a little bit about, can I bring in 20% more? And again, you're not there to just be like, I need everybody to like me all the time. It's never going to happen. Don't fish for that. But if you're like, why am I playing clubs that hold 80 people and only 25 people are there? And someone else is playing and they're filling up 3 rooms and they have 800 people a night, maybe there's something to how maybe you can get closer to that with a couple of adjustments.
And that's the show. If you're listening on a platform that allows ratings and reviews, do that. It helps more people find the show, so it'll get bigger and better, and hopefully I'll have a chance to sell out one day. But you'll be an OG listener that can brag to all your friends. Anyways, why don't you go and check us out at bigfatsnaredrum.com and follow us on all the socials. Just search for Big Fat Snare Drum and you will find us. The show is edited in part using iZotope RX Audio Editor. It's amazing, so go check that out at iZotope.com. And thanks again to Gunnar Olsen for the theme music. Bye!